Hello everybody, this is City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. Today I have a layout that I made using the October My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. And the kit this month features a beautiful collection by Prima called Hello Pink Autumn. The collection has a fall theme, of course, and there was one piece of pattern paper in the kit that was very dark, and I thought it would look fantastic as a night sky. And it gave me the idea to use one of the photos that I had been meaning to scrapbook that you'll see in a little bit. And in order to scrapbook that photo, I needed a very large moon. So using my silhouette cameo, I cut a very simple moon shape. I used 80-pound white cardstock. That's what I always use in my silhouette. And after I cut the shape out, I used the stencil that was in the kit, and I added some texture to the moon by adding some modeling paste through the stencil. After I did that, I went back in with some gesso, and usually this is the first step, but I didn't add gesso initially, and I wasn't sure if I was going to add any color to the moon, so I went back and added a coat of gesso on top of the texture paste. And in the end, I really didn't need the gesso because I don't add any sprays or anything like that to the background, but I added it just for some insurance, just in case I wanted to later on. And I did dry the modeling paste thoroughly before I added the gesso. This is the piece of pattern paper that I'm going to be using for this layout. I wanted to darken the area right behind the moon, so I'm using some black gesso. I could have used black acrylic paint as well, but I happen to have the gesso, so I thought that I would try putting some around the border of the moon, and I'm applying it with my finger. I find that that's the best way to fade out the gesso. I don't want there to be any of the harsh lines that a paintbrush might leave, so this is my my application method of choice. And at first I was drawing the outline of the moon with a pencil, but it was just easier to hold the moon on the paper and then apply the paint underneath it. I wasn't trying to be exact. I just wanted there to be some darkness all around. So I wasn't concerned that I might put a little bit of extra paint in one area or gesso in one area and a little bit less in another. I just wanted the general look of darkness behind the moon. And I do think that adding the darker color right behind the moon helps it to pop a little bit off of the background. I let the background dry, and then I start working on the stars that I'm going to be putting in the background of the layout. I'm using a piece of white cardstock. That is the other part of the cardstock that I use to cut out the moon. And I put some Versamark, which is an adhesive, and I put some black embossing powder on top. And now I'm using my heat tool to set the embossing powder. I'm going to do the same thing in silver and gold. I apply a second coat of the black embossing powder. Because the embossing powder that I just heated is still hot, the next layer of embossing powder sticks to the layer that was already there, so I didn't have to apply more adhesive. I find that that doesn't work with all embossing powders, but it did work with this particular one. So I have made 2 additional areas, one of gold and one of silver, and I'm using some punches that are in my stash, and I'm punching out silver and gold stars. Since right now I'm not really sure exactly what I'm going to do with the stars or what sizes and colors I'm going to want, I just punch a variety of sizes out of all 3 colors. I used that confetti star punch, and I punched out quite a few stars, and I'll be using those in a little bit. Now I'm working on the background. The green piece of paper is just a piece of paper from my stash that I'm not going to be using, so I'm using that to mount all of my papers on. I'm making a border out of this beautiful pink pattern paper. I thought that this would be a nice addition to the background, so it wasn't only black, because I'm going to be using some pink elements on the paper, so I thought that this would help to tie the embellishments in with the background. I think this is a great way to conserve pattern paper. I'm just using 4 1-inch strips, and I cut 2 of them on 45-degree angles, and I make a frame. I cut this piece of pattern paper to size so that it will be a little bit smaller than 12 by 12, and it will leave a pink border around the outside. I'm adding some white acrylic paint. It's watered down paint, and I wanted to splatter it before I attach it down to the pink background. In the final layout, there's only a little hint of this gold, but I like that small hint. I think it adds a little something to the layout. I don't want to overdo the gold because I don't have any gesso on the background to protect it. I oversplattered a little bit there, but my finger easily cleaned up the extra gold spray. Here you can see that my moon is curling up a little bit, especially at the top. So I cut an identical moon and I'm layering the one with the texture paste on top of that, and I think that'll just make it a little bit thicker and make it a little bit easier to work with. So I attach those two together using ATG adhesive. And now I'm going to pop it up on some foam. I had some white foam, so I figured that was the safest way to pop it up, because if you're looking at it from an angle, you might see a bright color if I put that behind the white. So I felt that this white would work really well. So I cut that to size and I attach that down to the back of the moon. Once I'm done popping up the moon on some foam, I do a very quick cleanup and I start working on my photo. I've already mounted my photo on some black cardstock, and now I'm going to mount it again on this plaid pattern paper. I use some Distress Oxide in black soot, and I ink the edges of the pattern paper, and my photo is going to sit right on top of the moon. I need some foam to pop up the photo so that it will sit correctly on top of the moon. And I accidentally put a little bit too much foam on the bottom because, as I mentioned, the bottom is going to sit on the moon. So I peeled up a little bit of the foam. I cut the excess away and I stuck it on the edge of my desk, and I use it later on for something else. And I attached down the photo with the ATG adhesive. And now I'm adding a little bit more Distress Oxide along the edge of the black pattern paper. Strangely, I attached down my photo and I hadn't yet attached down the moon. So I go back in with some adhesive and I attach the moon down now. Next, I'm going to attach the black piece of pattern paper to the pink frame that I made earlier. So I line the paper up and I press it down. And now I'm going to start embellishing. To the left, you could see all of the embellishments that I'm thinking I might add to the layout. I don't use all of them, but I do use most of them. I didn't want to have just 3 clusters on this particular layout. I wanted there to be a number of small clusters going across the moon. So I end up with 4 clusters. One of them is very large, one of them is medium, and then I have 2 smaller ones. Usually I try to stick to the odd numbers of clusters, but in this particular case, 4 ended up working out just fine, I think. Each of the clusters has the same elements. I have some fussy cut or die cut pieces. I have pumpkins in each of the clusters. I have the dimensional flowers from Prima. And I have a few leaves that I had fussy cut from some of the papers as well. I want all of the clusters to coordinate, but I don't want them to be exactly the same. So I'm purposely making the clusters different sizes. I have one of those bluish green flowers in each of the clusters, or at least I will by the end, and that helps to tie everything together, I think. I'm using some Distress Oxide to ink the edges of all of the paper pieces that are on the layout. The color that I'm using here is Seedless Preserves. I like the idea of using purple to ink the edges. I think that it goes really well with the collection, and I like the idea of using purple in this nighttime sky layout. My photo was the inspiration for this layout. It's a photo of both of my daughters. It was from a couple of years ago when we went to Salem, Massachusetts. I speak frequently about how we go there frequently in October and we enjoy all of the Halloween activities that they have there. Here they're standing in front of this Bewitched statue that they have in the center of town. And since the moon is part of the statue, I thought that using a moon on the layout would go along with the photo. Now I'm using some of the Seedless Preserves on a dauber, and I just really lightly touched a couple of those modeling paste circles with the dauber. I didn't want to take away from the luminous white moon, but I did want there to be just a little hint of another color. So I just put a tiny, tiny dab of color. I wasn't 100% sure if I wanted it, but I was happy with the limited amount that I did add. Now I'm adding some photo corners to my layout. I'm using the same pattern paper that I used for the pink that's in the background. I use the Seedless Preserved Distress Oxide to ink the edges of all the photo corners. Before I attach those photo corners down, I suddenly pick up this piece of pattern paper that I had wanted to fussy cut, and I start fussy cutting out some squash and inking the edges and attaching it down to the clusters. I liked the addition of the squash because it's a little bit smaller than the other embellishments that are in the cluster, and I want to have a variety of sizes, and I also want a variety of colors. Now that that's taken care of, I go back to the photo corners and I attach the photo corners down to the layout. I do like to attach those down as quickly as possible because there have been times when I have forgotten to attach them down and I have lost one of them or more. I usually find them by the end of the layout, but usually it's after I've already punched out new ones. These are the stars that I had cut out earlier. If you can see in the photo, at the base of the statue, there are stars on the ground. I never noticed them when we were there in person, but looking at the photo, I liked the way that mixture of stars looked, and I wanted to do the same thing on the background. So that's where I got my idea for combining silver and gold stars. So I'm putting both the silver and the gold stars on the background, and I'm trying to vary the sizes, so I don't want too many of the same sized stars in the same area. But I'm really not using too many rules. A lot of the stars are the same sizes, so I'm just kind of spreading them around and making them look the way that I think that they look good. And I spend a really long time spreading them around, so you might see some stars jumping around on the video because I just couldn't include all that footage. It was extensive. I just kept moving them around and moving them around. So I leave the stars alone for a little while. I do go back to them, and I add some florals to the clusters. I have embossed some die cuts, and I embossed them in lavender and also in blue. And in each of the clusters, I have both colors of leaves or branches. And I heat emboss them with some glitter embossing powder. I really like the way the glitter looks on this layout because, of course, it's supposed to be a sparkly night sky. At about this point, I started to worry that I might have had a little bit too much sparkle and glitter on the layout. I was worried that the stars that are in the background and the glittery leaves or branches might compete with each other. But after taking a break and coming back, I decided that I was okay with the glitter, that the glitter that was on the leaves looks very different from the silver and gold glitter in the background. Now I'm adding some pearls to the layout, and I'm using some green pearls, some pink pearls, and also some purple pearls. I have several sizes of the green pearls and the pink pearls, but that dark purple is a pearl that I only have one size of. I bought a set of pearls from, I can't remember, one of the big box stores, and they weren't a variety of sizes, but they were colors that I don't have, and I'm glad I got it because a lot of times you need different colors depending on the paper collection. So I think that the variety in the other pearls helped make up for the fact that I only had the one size of purple pearls. So you can see now that I'm working on my title. I'm using a set of thickers that was in a previous My Creative Scrapbook kit. And at first I was thinking of painting them, but then when I looked carefully at them, I realized that they were just perfect for this layout. They're black with little flecks of white, and they look very similar to a night sky. So I decided that instead of painting them, I would use them as is, but I would mount them on a piece of the pink pattern paper that I've used on other parts of the layout. So that's what I did, and I straightened them up off camera. It takes me so long, so I just lined them up straight on that piece of paper, and I am embellishing the title with a few of those die-cut embossed branches. And then I start adding more stars. I bring over my little stash of gold and silver stars, and I begin arranging them. I ended up not using the black stars. I tried a few on the layout and they just didn't do what I thought they were going to do. So I decided to stick to the gold and the silver, and I continue to arrange them on the layout. I fussy cut a leaf out of one of the pattern papers, and I thought that it would look nice in the large cluster on the bottom. To attach down the stars, I was going to use ATG adhesive because I can always reposition that, but then I decided that the stars were too small to use the ATG gun, so I was going to be brave and I was going to just use some wet glue. I'm using gel glue, and I was going to attach all of the stars down to the layout using glue. I also use that same glue to attach down the pearls. And I wanted to reposition the butterfly, and I kind of tore it in half when I pulled it up, but I was able to reassemble it. I wanted to put a little bit closer to the title. And my older daughter, Danielle, suggested that I hang a little something from the moon. So I thought that was a great idea, and I got out some embroidery thread, and I made one large stitch, and I made it a little bit crooked, so I just had to fiddle around with the embroidery thread a little bit, and I made it straight. And then I had this jewel in my stash. I have no idea where I got it. I doubt it was for scrapbooking, but it could have been. I really don't know. I only had one of them, and I thought that that would be the perfect little jewel to have dangling off the moon. So now I'm fixing up that butterfly a little bit better, and I'm adding some black pearls to all of the photo corners. And I like that fall leaf that I fussy cut out and added to the large cluster on the bottom earlier, so I was thinking that I wanted to add a couple more of those leaves. So I fussy cut them out, and I added one to the bottom cluster and one to the cluster that's to the left of the photo. And that completes the layout, everybody. Thank you so much for watching my video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. And I want to say thank you so much for watching my video. I so appreciate all of the views, and I'm so touched by the comments that so many of you have left me. I really, really appreciate it, and each one brightens my day. Thank you so much. In the description box, you will find a link to the My Creative Scrapbook website. This is the limited edition kit. There are several other kits that are also beautiful, and I hope that you will check it out. I hope that everybody has a fantastic day, and I will be back with another video soon, and I hope to see you then. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.